صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most gracious, the most merciful. Peace and blessings be upon Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I hope everyone is doing well, alhamdulillah. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all of His blessings, all of His bounties, and for giving us the tawfiq to be present here, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. We also make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He increases His blessings upon us, His mercy upon us, and also He brings peace to the people of Palestine, to the people of Syria. He makes the people victorious. He Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the land to the people who deserve it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase the ranks of the martyrs of Palestine, of Syria, and all the places around the world. So today's discussion is about the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he mentions to value 5 things before 5 things. We've all heard of that hadith. اغتنم خمس قبل خمس. So inshallah we'll talk about each and every one of them, inshallah, and then I hope that after this lecture, inshallah, we will value those 5 blessings, inshallah, more than before, inshallah. So the first one, if you look at it, it goes from being specific to being more general. So the last one also mentions is your life before death. That's the most that's applicable for all of them, right? But that's the most general one. Technically, if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam just said that would also be enough, because in reality, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us here in this world, if we just value this existence, then we'll become successful in the hereafter, right? If a person doesn't value this existence and a person takes this existence for granted, some people actually think that, they claim that we just randomly came here, so therefore they could do whatever they like, and they also believe that there's no hereafter. So then they haven't valued this world, and therefore they'll be in huge destruction in the hereafter. But for us, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us iman. The fact that we are present here, alhamdulillah, shows that we do value it. We do value our life to a certain extent, alhamdulillah. We left everything. We left our work and we gathered here, alhamdulillah. So there is, alhamdulillah, we have some value in our lives, alhamdulillah. However, no one can claim that, they are perfect and they have been able to, maximize their lifetime. Who can claim that? Nobody can claim that. There's always room for improvement. So here in this hadith, one of the first items Rasul mentions is your youth. Value your youth before your old age. So youth doesn't necessarily have to be, in English, when you hear the word youth, you would think, up until your teenage, your initial age, and then up until your teenage, and after that you become an adult. But youth here is referring to your age of energy. like age of strength, and that age differs from person to person, but usually it could last up until you're 50. You're at your peak when you hit your 40, that's your peak. So imagine everything before that, that's all leading up to 40. So now, do you think that as soon as you're 41, you lost everything? No, it will gradually decrease. So you'll have your strength, your mental strength, your physical strength, well past 40. And depending upon how you use your strength, how much you strive your physical body and how much you strive your mental, your brain, that will determine how long that strength will last you. For example, if a person strives in the Quran, for example, if a person strives in memorizing the Quran and always reciting the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps his brain fresh. He will never get to that age of senile, where you're not sure what you did yesterday, where you're not sure what you had for breakfast. That age that comes. Also, there's different diseases, for example, Alzheimer disease or Parkinson, where a person forgets everything that they have done. They're having a difficulty remembering things. So if you do certain things in your youth, then you never get to that. You could be a 70-year-old sheikh, 80-year-old sheikh, but your brain is very fresh. It's very fresh, right? Because that person in their youth, they did not waste their youth. They did not waste their youth. They did not waste their brain. They did not waste their body, their strength, physical strength. The people, if you see back home, if you go back home, they don't, especially from third world countries, a lot of the physical labor is still there, right? So they don't have to exercise to stay fit. Like their work, their day-to-day chores, and also their what do you call it? Their jobs requires them to be physically fit. It makes them physically fit. So then when you go see them in Hajj, they're the most active people, in their 70s and 80s, and they're going super fast, breezing past you. And we're young here, but we're like just after one round of sa'i, we're done. No, we need a break. We need a special shoes with special foam in the bottom, right, to function. If we don't do separate physical exercise, then in our, forget 50s, probably in your 40s, you'll lose it. You'll start having knee pain and back pain and different pains. If you lift something too heavy, now you need 2 weeks of rest, right? Has that happened? That has happened to all of us. So that's because we're not using our body to the max. We're not physically exerting it. So physically exerting doesn't necessarily mean that you go work out at the gym. It doesn't have to. If you just spend a lot of time worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you spend a lot of time worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you spend a lot of time in qiyam, just your qiyam, long qiyam, that also will make you physically fit, right? If you recite a lot of Quran, that will make you mentally fit. And then you stay away from sitting on the couch and just entertaining yourself. Stay away from that. Then that will also make you physically fit. If all the household tasks that you have to do, for example, cutting the grass, fixing something in the house, instead of hiring someone, you just try to do it yourself. Try to do it yourself, and that will keep you fit. Even helping out your spouse in the kitchen. So any opportunity that you get, any free time that you get, you value your youth. You realize that, hey, I have the energy. I am not bedridden. I can physically do things, and I am free. Instead of swiping away on my phone, let me be more productive. And when I say productive, I don't mean that you're always making money and you're always reciting Quran and busy in physical worship. You can do other things that are valuable. You can do other things that are valuable. Even reading books, for example, you could read books, as long as it has some benefit, even in this world, you should engage in that. So mentions that we covered this hadith this past Thursday. Min husni Islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'nihi. That from the beauty of the religion of a person, from the beauty of the Islam of a person, is that he lets go of all the things that are la ya'ni. In Urdu, this term is also there, la yani. Ye banda la yani kaam kar raha hai. They say that la yani means things that are not beneficial, things that are not beneficial whatsoever. So as soon as a person lets go of la yani things, so now la yani things could be two categories, two types. One is that you don't try to mend in people's affair. Oh, tell me more about yourself. Tell me your salary. Tell me your social security number. It's just unnecessary information. A lot of times we engage in that unnecessary conversation to basically to be nosy. When a person is too nosy, trying to figure out more and more things about others, that's also la yani. So we're wasting time. Sometimes actually, if we have spiritual disease, if we, for example, have the disease of jealousy, so now you're poking at other people's affairs, then you find out more stuff from them, that's gonna make you more jealous. For example, if you have the disease of jealousy, you didn't need to know other people's information. So at that point, you realize that you did something la yani. If you stayed away from that, you would have been better off. Another meaning of la yani would be doing anything that's not beneficial in this world or the hereafter. So obviously, we're not even talking about sinful things. Sinful things are obviously harmful, but I'm talking about things that are mubah, things that could be considered mubah. For example, playing video games. Now some kids might say, some video games are beneficial. When I had this conversation, all the students started mentioning, what if I'm playing video games to increase my eye and hand coordination and have like good instincts? What's that called? Reflect. What's the word? Reflex. Good reflex. Play games to have good reflex. Okay, but I told them that what if that's all you're doing and you don't know anything else in life and you're very good at reflex? That's not going to do you any good in life. You have good reflex, but you don't know how to read. Good reflex, but you don't know how to write. Good reflex, but you don't know how to read the Quran. So that's not going to work. So fine, to build some reflex, you can allow you to play some games. But you don't need to have the best reflex and then you have nothing else in your life. So similarly, anything else like that, you might say that I'm reading the news. Maybe you want to be more aware of the current events just a little bit. You can't spend your entire morning, 3 hours in the morning, just current events of all the realm of life. You even looked up the current events of what's happening in Hollywood and in Bollywood. You don't need to be aware of that, right? So we spend a lot of time in la yani things. If we just cut that out and replace it with something useful, initially it's going to act like a chore. It's going to feel like a chore. By default, shaitan makes us feel like, this thing that you're doing is beneficial. He's going to tell you that, no, that's too much work. It's too much work. Let's look at something that's not work. That's just pure pleasure. So that's la yani. Figure out something that will give you information, that will make you better. And also, it's not too fatiguing in your free time. So we should figure out in your free time, do something that's not too fatiguing, but also that's beneficial. If you do things that is only just entertainment, pure entertainment and no benefit, then that's la yani thing. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from la yani things. So especially in the youth, in the young age, we involve in a lot of la yani things, right? Only when people get older, maybe then. But you know what? If we spend our youth doing la yani thing, you think what are the chances that once we get old, we'll not do la yani things? It will just continue. You build a habit of 3 decades of la yani things. Your free time was just always spent on the TV. 3 decades of doing that. As soon as you hit 45 and 50, you're gonna turn that off, turn the habit off. You're not gonna. We're gonna continue that habit of doing la yani things. So we need to stop it now. We need to start getting into the habit of yani things, not la yani, but the things that are meaningful. Inshallah, in our old age also, we'll continue doing those meaningful things. Khair, some of the things that we can spend our youth in is in the worship and in helping the community. Doing Amr bil Ma'ruf, right? Helping the poor, and then coming to the masjid more often, and saving ourselves from haram things. When you do that in your young age, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes it way more than us doing that in our old age. One of the people who will be under the shade of Arsh on the Day of Judgment will be that person who spent his youth in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if we can make sure, in the young age, you have a lot of energy. So you'll be, whatever you get yourself into, you'll be very enthusiastic in doing that. Youth, when they start playing video games, they want to be the best at it. When they play soccer, they want to be the best at it. When they physically fight, when they get angry at someone, they basically put their all into it. Whatever they go into, they put their 100% into it, right? So we want to make sure our youth, ourselves and our youngsters, we want to make sure they're putting they're spending their energy in the right direction. If they can put their energy in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they'll go much higher, much far than the seniors. So may Allah give them the tawfiq. Khair. Next point. Here I mentioned that some of the Sahaba, they put all their youth into the right direction, and they were commanders of armies at the age of 17. Imagine that. Now at the age of 17, we have no idea what's going on. We're just so lost. The today's 17-year-old is so lost. Only trying to figure out, how should I get a high score on the SATs? That's it. That's all is on their mind. Which school should I get into? That's it. That's about it. Right? So that was the time of the Sahaba. Next one is your siha, your health before your becoming sick. So the fact that we're all present here, alhamdulillah, we have some level of health, right? Some level of health. The only time a person could claim that they're at the lowest level of health would be if they were at their deathbed. They have such a disease that will lead them to death. So only at that time they could say that there's nothing better, nothing lower than this. But alhamdulillah, the fact that we're here, we have some level of health, alhamdulillah. So we should use this health to, again, going back to using it for the sake of the right thing, using our health to do the right thing. Because when you're healthy, when you're sick, when you're on your deathbed, no sick person thinks of committing sin, right? Only when they're healthy, they have the desire, they have their lower self even tells them to commit sins. So at that time, if you stay away from sins and you make sure you steer yourself in the right direction, then you have valued your health. You have valued your health. The best form of being thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what's the best form of being thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is by your actions, right? You can say thank you, you can say alhamdulillah, but at the same time, you don't pray. Then what kind of shukr is that? That's just lip service, right? That's just lip service. Through lips, you're saying alhamdulillah, lama laka shukr, but at the same time, you're not showing up for the prayer. And when an opportunity of sinning comes, you go ahead and commit that sin. So now you're not being thankful. Similarly, you're also not being thankful for your sihat, Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you health. You're using that health to commit sins. How bad is that? This health is also from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This body is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Each and every joint of yours. The fact that it's working, it requires a thank, right? And the best thing that you could do is by being obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Understand? So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give all of us tawfiq to engage in good things, to engage our bodies in good things, to make sure that our health is being valued by doing the right thing, by staying away from the wrong things. And at every level of, even if you're sick, a person who is sick, maybe they have some disease, they're still better, because the fact that they're alive, the sickness is not leading them into death. They have some opportunity. They could do something. If they're able to just complain that they're sick, they could have just not complained. They could have just done something better. They could have just done some tasbih instead of complaining about their sickness. The fact that they're complaining, they have some control over their tongue, that they can articulate the words of complaint. They could have avoided that, and they could have just done shukr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Next one is your wealth. Your wealth before your poverty. We all have some level of wealth. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us some level of wealth. The fact that we're not on the streets and begging, we have some wealth. And a lot of times people, when they have wealth, they always think that if I had more, I would do good things. They always engage their wealth in their lively things and luxury things, and then they are left with nothing. And then what they say? If I had more, I would give. If I had more, I'd give. But if they had more, they'd just expand their lifestyle and still won't have anything. So they're always left with saying, if I was a millionaire, if I was a billionaire, I would do this, X, Y, and Z. Well, all that X, Y, and Z could have been done at a lower scale. At your current income, if you spent a little bit less, you could have more savings, and you could have done those things. You don't have to donate, a huge amount to be considered a generous person. So it mentions that the person, it is a mafhum of a hadith where it mentions that the one who has little, and despite having little, he spends, is better than a person who has a lot and he spends tiny amount. Like if you had $10 in saving, from that you spent $5, as opposed to a person who has $10,000 and he spent even $100. So you are more, you have more reward. Your $5 are more heavier on the day of judgment. It will be heavier on the scales as opposed to the other person's $100, because $100 is like less than 1% compared to his amount of wealth that he has. And we are spending 50% of our savings, person who has 10. So you have to never think of it like this, that if I had, sure, you can always have intention, have good intention that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me more wealth, I'll spend more. So that's also reward worthy. When a person has the intention that, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me more, I'll give even more, that's a good intention, no doubt about that. However, don't just not spend anything at all, not spend your wealth in the good things, and just always put it off by saying, if I had more, I'll do more. If I had more, only then I'll do it. That's not the correct intention. Next one is فراغك قبل شغلك. Rasulullah mentions that before your free time, before you become busy. So we already touched upon it. Free time is the most valuable thing. Someone could steal, like if someone stole a few dollars of yours, that's not going to hurt, as opposed to someone stealing 2 hours of yours. Right? Someone tells you, hey, come, let's meet at 5 p.m., right? And then you get there at 5 p.m., and then he's showing up at 7 p.m. The whole time he kept telling you, I'm on the way, I'm almost there, almost there, almost there. That has happened to all of us, where a friend wastes our time, right? You should have told, what do you tell him? That you should not have wasted my time. You could have taken $10 of mine, but should not have wasted my time, because the $10 you can get that back. You get that back. But the time that was wasted, You can never get that back, right? No matter what, that 2 hours of yours will never come back. So we have to be very, very careful. You know, all the businessmen, all the billionaires, they value their time. You know, they'll spend billions of dollars on their private jets to save some time, right? Save time at the TSA security line and, you know, flying regular commercial airlines. They'll save the time. They'll use money to save time. But the downside is that that free time they do get, they're not worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? However, us, any free time we do have, we have to figure out how to maximize that, how to make sure that it's not spent in layani. That's all. If you can make sure your time is not spent in layani, then you're doing great. You're doing very good in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're actually succeeding. In fact, you'll also succeed in this world if you don't spend your time in layani. So may Allah give all of us the tawfiq. Lastly, you know, the overarching point is your life before your death. So if we can always make sure that we're valuing our time, our life, the fact that we're breathing, every breath that we're taking in and out, this is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that if you wanted to, you know, thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you couldn't even thank for one blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the greatest example of that is your breathing. That's a blessing, even though that's a single blessing, but you couldn't count how many times you breathe. Every time you're able to breathe, that's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what's the best way of thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that? Every time you're breathing, not only through your lips, you can say Alhamdulillah, but also just make sure you're in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you're truly thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give myself and all of us the tawfiq to be thankful, to value these 5 things, value our life, value our youth, our strength, our free time, our health and our wealth before it goes away. If it doesn't go away in this world, as soon as death comes, everything is gone, right? Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.